is Chris McKay, and I am an engagement advisor for Indigenous and Community Engagement. And so we are live streaming, and we have an audience here in our meeting room as well. So we will go through the presentation, and then we'll have a Q&A after. And I'm not the technical response person, but we have some folks in the room that can answer some technical questions if some arise. Okay, so the purpose of the Webequie Supply Road is to move materials, supplies, and people from the Webequie Airport to the McFalls Lake area. Also to provide local employment and economic development opportunities for Webequie, and provide experience, training, and opportunities to youth, help encourage the pursuit of additional skills through post-secondary education. So very focused on Webequie and opportunities to help those community members achieve benefit from the Webequie Supply Road. So the project description in general, it's 107 kilometers long from the First Nation to the McFalls Lake. The length of the road corridor within the reserve lands is 17 kilometers. And the width of the corridor is about 35 meters, which is a right-of-way for 2-lane service of all-season road. 6 major water body crossings with bridges and 25 other water body crossings requiring culverts will be part of the project. So you can tell that it's probably a heavy environmental assessment. Includes temporary and permanent aggregate pit rock quarry areas and equipment for processing, as well as access roads to those areas. There'll be 4 construction camps that are temporary to accommodate construction crews, with one site being repurposed to act as a permanent operation maintenance facility for plowing, salting, et cetera, and storage and laydown yards temporary for equipment and materials. So there will be access points along the right-of-way. So the WSR preferred route showing the proposed camp and pit and quarry locations. I'm not sure if folks can see this map here. But we do have ones for the folks that are attending here live that could be a little bit more legible. But as you can see from the community itself, the preferred access road here is in the pink. And then throughout that, there'd be culverts and water crossings, as well as laydown areas and camps. So if you have a closer look, you can really see where some of those locations are. Again, there's other road projects in the area, which is quite complicated, I think, for folks to understand that there's 3 different projects happening at the same time. So there's the Webequie Supply Road, the Northern Road Link, and then there's the Community Access Road. All are at different stages of the EA process. And so when we talk about the Webequie Supply Road, we're just talking about the one road extension from the Webequie Airport to the McFalls Lake area. So some of the highlights of the engagement and consultation. So we had a consultation round in 2002, that was round 1. We had round 2 in 2023. And throughout that process, the following engagement consultation activities occurred. So we had public open houses as well as community open houses on the Supply Road. Some of those were probably a little more focused on maybe some of the technical side of the engineering and bridges and that type of design build. Where today here we're talking about more of the engagement and the consultation process. So information can be found on the website. There's also plenty of notices and information that go out. And we've had several meetings with interested parties and other groups that express interest into the project. We also have very entertaining Wawate radio shows and internet shows and live stream, where some of those discussions focus more on specific items, such as caribou, we'll say. It'd be very specific and geared to that part of the project. So that information is available. Tony? Supplyroad.ca is the location of the previous material. Certainly, you can find all the information you need there. So some of the things that we've heard so far during the engagement and the consultation process is certainly from the community side, the road ownership and policing. That's something I think is very important for the social side of the ownership of the road. Climate change, possible effects from all the projects put together, and that's something that, you look at the amount of projects that are within the far north, there'll eventually be some cumulative impact to water, caribou, et cetera, et cetera. So communities really focus on selling gravel and rock to build the road. That's something that they've identified as important. Job opportunities, protecting the treaty rights, downriver water quality. I think that's important for a lot of folks that are outside the project area. And worries about more drug and alcohol use, and that has to go back to the ownership and the policing. Is an influx of people that can access the community could cause other social problems. Okay, where are we now in the EA? So right now we're doing the effects assessment. So what we do is we have input from the community members on all sorts of topics and issues. So we describe the project and decide what will be studied and how it'll be measured. After that process, we identify the limits of the study, so land, time, and describe how things are now, so current situation. Identify possible effects of the project and how these can be controlled. So looking at trying to mitigate or avoid any of these negative effects. And at the end, are there leftover effects? So looking at the leftover effects from past, present, and future projects, the big picture, I think it's very important to see how other communities adapt to impacts and development within their territory. Identifying monitoring that is required. So long-term monitoring is very important to this process, and that was identified by the community. And compare advantages and disadvantages of the project versus doing nothing. So that's something that needs to be measured, and certainly we can look at the benefits versus the impact. How do we deal with the possible effects? So some examples of our diagram here: eliminate and avoid. Could be move the road to another location if there's a potential impact. Those are all things that still need to be narrowed down, finalized. Reduce, so change the way we do things such as different construction methods or different road design. And offset, clean up an area somewhere else that has been affected by another project. Improve habitat in another location to make up for possible effects. And this is something that you see within areas like the city of Timmins. They have areas that they have had major impact on that they've improved, called the Coniorum, which is a great example of what an offset is. Looking at the project effects and what do we think about? Here's just a few examples of some of the things that are top of mind. Surface water, fish and fish habitat, the land, soils, and terrain, the plants and wetlands, groundwater, spring water, wildlife and terrestrial habitat, the air, and species at risk. Other project effects, the people, the social side, the social environment, to be more specific, the economy, lands and resources, the health of community members, the environment and what we see, the visual environment, Aboriginal and treaty rights and interests, culture, and the effects of all projects past, present, and future together. Accidents and things that go wrong is something important. Be prepared for emergency response. Those are all things that are top of mind to community members. There'll be more traffic, there could be more accidents, and how do we ensure that our members are safe when they're traveling along this road? And climate change is also another major topic that we've discussed within the community. Feeling the effects now, past and future. The effect of all the projects together. So this is a discussion on the cumulative effects. So leftover project effects from the past, present, and future projects. This is something that I think a lot of folks are aware of that are happening within their territories. For example, the Victor Mine, the Goldcorp Musselwhite Mine, the supply roads that we're discussing today, Wata Power Transmission Line, Greenstone Gold Hard Rock Mine, the Ring of Fire Plan Mines, Eagle's Nest, Black Thor, Blackbird, Black Label, and other projects that may be within the territory. So add all the leftover effects of projects together, and how do we reduce and eliminate the effects and mitigate? And that's what you call cumulative effects. Again, this slide here is a little redundant, but you can see on the map throughout the far north where all these projects are. You can see waterways, you can see where there's potential impacts. So again, some of the projects looking at for the long-term effects, Victor Mine, Goldcorp Musselwhite Mine, the Webequie Supply Road, Northern Road Link, Martin Falls, Wata Transmission Line, Greenstone Gold Hard Rock Mine, and again, the projects that are within the Ring of Fire, Eagle's Nest, Black Thor, Blackbird, and Black Label. So those are the projects. So next steps, where do we go from here? So here we are now. So the consultation is round 3. We see feedback on preliminary effects and assessment. Continue efforts to assess potential effects of the project, including cumulative effects. Continue efforts to receive Indigenous knowledge and lands and resource use information. So looking forward to the winter and the summer of 2024, we have input to the preliminary effects assessment of the project, input to proposed impact management, mitigation, and follow-up monitoring. So that's the next part of the comment period. So there will be the assessment, the effects assessment of the project that will be put out. Fall 2024, summer 2025, the review of the draft final environmental assessment report and impact statement. So we're looking at that into late fall and summer 2025. And that's my presentation on where we are today with the project. Again, this one is focused on more of the social effects and the engagement process. So, do we have any questions? Yes.
Is on your website, is the preliminary effects assessment available?
Michael, is the preliminary effects assessment available on the website?
Where do you get that to read it?
How do we access that?
Just for the listening audience, point to the mic. So for Webequie Supply Road, we're planning to release the draft report to the Indigenous communities. So we have 22 Indigenous communities on our list. The plan's either end of October or early November, where we're adding another 60 days to the public review process specifically for Indigenous communities. So we're going to have 60 days, call it the Indigenous review, and then we'll have the public review, which includes the same set of Indigenous communities. So the public review goes to the government review team. It goes to all the stakeholders, all the 22 communities. So we've decided to add another 60 days for a total 120 days for the draft report. What typically happens after that is that whatever the volume of comments we'll get, and it's going to be volumes, so it's hard to estimate how to process each of those. You know, it could take 3 months, 4 months, 5 months to integrate all those comments and respond to all those comments and update the draft to a final report for submission next year for both the federal government and the provincial government. So the preliminary effects assessment is going to be in that draft release.
I guess I'm confused. You want feedback on the preliminary effects assessment, but there isn't a report to review? Sorry, I'm new to this, so I can't provide feedback till I read what the assessment.
So Angie, that's the
Yeah.
methodology stuff, right? Like that's more the methodology than the actual report. So there's usually 2 phases in the environmental impact assessment, right? You do the baseline, and then on that baseline, whatever the project is, in this case it's a road, you put a road onto the natural conditions, what happens? So the proponent's job is to come up with an effects assessment of all the value components associated with that. So that's being completed now as we speak. The last piece of that is the cumulative effects assessment. You have to do all the effects assessment first on all the value components. And then once that's done, then whatever is the other projects you're considering in the cumulative effects assessment is the last portion of the report. So that's being written now as we speak.
And you said that'll be released in October, and then there'll be something to respond to.
Yes.
So there's nothing to respond to right now then?
This is just a project update
Okay.
at this point.
Sorry. Okay, I understand.
So unlike the other projects like Northern Road Link, there are study plans we're getting feedback on and stuff. So we went through that process already. Yeah. Yeah, it's coming. 7 years. We're in year 7. It's like, I didn't have much gray hair when I started. Takes a long time to build things in Canada. It really does. Yeah. So, we're looking at 2027 maybe for a decision by both Minister of MECP and the federal minister. And then you got to think of, construction, pre-construction, construction, all those scenarios. So, and those things, when you're planning that stuff out, like you got to assume some things, right? And you're asking for cost estimates, some of those things is, well, what kind of schedule are you looking at? Is it a 24-hour schedule? Then we think we can build it in 3 years. If it's a 12-hour schedule in that remote area, then maybe 5 years. It takes a long time to build things in this country. It really does. Go ahead.
It's funny how the phases are it's one road. Will the Webequie Supply Road, we actually start construction when you haven't got a road to sort of bring construction materials to that area? Are we flown in, or a winter supply road, or will you wait until all 3 sections are kind of ready to go in terms of building the kind of 3 phases?
No, that's a good question. So each road's different. So Martin Falls Community Access Road is exactly that.
Yeah.
Regardless if Ring of Fire goes forward, they want a road.
Yeah.
They've been at it for almost 20 years. So this is their community access road.
Yeah.
Webequie Supply Road, call it an economic development road. They don't want the situation, I guess, like maybe say for instance at Wapscad where there's no road going home to the mine site. They don't want that.
Yeah.
They want their own road for any proposed mines that's in the future. So they're moving on an economic development road to move supplies, their own people and services, et cetera. So that's what they want. The Northern Road Link is different. That's what's going to unlock the Ring of Fire. And that's a different project, a different purpose. Its specific purpose is an industrial road to move ore body. Mm-hmm. Right? So Webequie Supply Road, the mine doesn't need the Webequie Supply Road. To move the ore body, it's not going to Webequie. Yeah. It's going to go south. Yeah. Right? So Webequie Supply Road is an economic development road that they want for their community. The north-south part of the road, Martin Falls is its own project. They're gonna build that road, regardless if Ring of Fire goes or not.
Yeah. So I guess go back to my question then. Are they actually going to start building the Webequie Supply Road before there's a Northern Road Link is constructed? They would start it a couple of years in advance. I mean, the process. I'm just thinking of.
So part of the construction estimates and schedules is premised on that, yeah. Right? So when you're going out, because you have to do certain. I don't want to get too technical on you guys, but engineering. You got 30% detailed engineering or preliminary engineering design. So you want to move it to the closer you get to like 90%, 100% design, you kind of de-risk the project. You actually got a better estimation of the actual cost. So we started off at 30% preliminary engineering design. We're trying to move it to 90% to get a better estimate of what the cost is. The aggregate sources, if Tony, if you could put up that map again, or this over here. There's 2 sites there that there's sufficient aggregates to build the road. And that one deposit is actually on reserve. So there's different rules for on-reserve aggregate operations and provincial crown land operations. So they happen to have a deposit of aggregates that's on reserve that could be supplied to build the road. So there's actually 4 more sites along the road, I think, but the one on reserve there, the pink you see on the corner southeast, is the site that they're looking at to use for the road. Yeah.
Be a little more clear.
Yeah, so here's the deposit, that's what the pink is. So those 4 aggregate sites along the route, this is the one that they're looking at for the road. And that's why you have these access roads, right? So you have the trunk line, which is the line you're trying to build, but you also need material, right? So you gotta have to have these temporary access roads. I'm just talking to fill in the air, guys. Trying to be more informative and more insightful. Yeah, so what Chris was talking about the cumulative effects, what's reasonable out there that's going to be part of the modeling that's out there. So we propose a set of projects, as you saw on the map, that will take into consideration the cumulative effects assessment.
So the road is being built to McFalls?
Yes.
And it's economic development road. Oh, sorry.
It's okay.
So the road
Proposed.
is supposed to go to McFalls.
Yeah.
It's an economic development road, not necessarily tied in with Ring of Fire, but it could be.
Yeah, well, it's-
I'm just
yeah.
correct me if I'm wrong. That's why I'm
Yeah,
just
it's-
trying to understand.
So it's a remote road
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the day. What implicates the Webequie Supply Road is the northern road length.
Mm-hmm.
Because if the car project goes forward, a community access road, and the northern road link gets approved, then the Webequie Supply Road connects to a provincial highway, so it implicates it. The car gets implicated if the northern road link goes forward, because it's not just a community access road, it's not going to be part of an industrial road going north, right? So the sole purpose, when you read the purposes of the project, the car project is very specific, community access road. Webequie is very specific. It's basically what I'm calling, in summary, an economic development road for itself. What implicates both roads is the northern road link, which is not what tonight's about, but it changes, it implicates it, right?
Is that why you have to do all these consultations and stuff? It's not like if you were building the road from Pickle Lake up into the communities. It's not the same thing?
Yeah,
Or-
because they're different, they're based on different premises, right? So there's been accusation of project splitting. Again, I'll mention again, the Webequie Supply Road is not needed for the mines and the roads at all. They're not moving the ore body west, to where? At the airport? It's there's nothing there to process. There's
Yeah.
nothing to mobilize. It's going to move south, right? And so for Webequie, it's an economic development road. They don't want to fly in or fly out for any future mines. Let's build it. It takes a long time to look at roads, and they said, let's look at this as a possible opportunity for them.
What kind of economic development opportunities are there outside of mining and
Yeah, so about 15 or 17 years ago, when the staking rush was happening, you probably would have saw about 12 to 15 helicopters, field drums. It was a lot of activity going on. That was where the airport wasn't designed for that. It really wasn't, and there was nothing really set up, in terms of warehousing, in terms of remote, processing around core samples, or there's things that could have been done that made it easier to capture the opportunities, but it's not designed for that. So they started off with the vision, let's look at airport redevelopment. That's how the genesis of this road came. We want to become a regional hub, field depot, warehousing, but you have to grow that out. Like all reserves that know, there's only so much infrastructure, and you hit the capacity pretty quick just with your own stuff. Never mind trying to set up shop for a major undertaking like this, right? So they hit their limits on the power, they hit their limits on the infrastructure. They had to build that out first, and then in tandem they were looking at an airport redevelopment project, which was done by James, the First Nations project manager of Webequie. Yeah, so they got a plan for that, and part of that plan was looking at extending the road, or sort of the airstrip from 3,500 feet to 5,000, so you can land larger planes. Like the one of the painful things for any mining engineer is seeing they're ordering new equipment and they take a cutting torch to it because they have to fit it on a plane, right? So, so the larger the plane, the better for them. So they had a vision, you know, like 12 years ago that they embarked on, and so this is an extension of that vision, is the roads. So it could be fuel, it could be emergency services, it could be, as soon as you got a road there, directly there, you can provide a lot of stuff. It's a lot harder when you have to fly it in. You have a standby helicopter that's costing you, what is it, what's the prices now, and $1,500 an hour? For all?
More than that now.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Victor's using Hercules now to get some money for that.
Yeah,
We were talking about the cost of it.
yes.
So with all these dates, all these roads, access roads, supply road, Northern Link Road, and the mine itself, what's the end date to all of this? Is it, you mentioned 2027, is it going to be 2030? By the time the mine opens up, all the roads are open up and they're usable? Is that the year that people are looking at as a possible startup of the operations and so on?
It's probably the number one question we get asked all the time, Lawrence, and it's a fair question to ask. And it's only those that have done big projects will understand this answer. All we can give you is sort of the best case scenario, base case scenario, and worst case scenario, right? For us, you know, the base, the best case would be 3 years. Base case 5, worst case 7. It all depends on how things, like how the regulatory process is what dictates it. It really is. Until you do an undertaking and you try to get through, even as an Indigenous proponent, trying to get through the regulatory process, anybody that's done like any mines, any big projects, they'll tell you. I mean, the thing that tests you the most is patience. It's not the communities. It's the regulatory process. We can manage the community. I know how to deal with communities. It's the regulatory process that just, it's a grind. and so there's no steps you can skip. Even though you hear politically red tape reduction, permitting efficiencies, that's not a reality. And so we're in year 7, going on to year 8 with WSR. The fastest permitting I ever saw was Greenstone. It's about 5 years, start to finish. Greenstone mine. And I tip my hat to them. I said, I don't know how you did that. And I moved the highway too. But they did it in about 5 years. The average, for anything, average water power is 8 years. From conception to commissioning a hydro site, 8 years. It just takes a long time.
Yeah, I mean, these things take time, but it's because you're supposed to assess the environmental and social impacts, and you can't do that overnight. So I don't think it's good to necessarily complain about the process and the length of time. I know there is talk about red tape and all that stuff, but it's really important. Once you do these things, it's forever. There's no turning back. So it's very important, especially for remote communities and Indigenous communities, to consider how it's going to affect their future. So it's good to take a bit of time.
Oh yeah,
But,
I don't think I
mean,
was trying to
and not
complain.
just not
it's
just
saying,
stall or anything like that. But I mean, there will be significant environmental impacts, and we need to deal with those, and the best design and so on. So I think if it takes 7 years, that's life.
yeah.
Could take 20. Some projects have taken 30 years. So
Yeah.
so it's just the way it is.
think
if you're really considering the environment and the social impacts, yeah. Just a comment.
no, it's a fair
yeah,
comment.
yeah.
It's
Sorry, I'm an ecologist, so
I think the chief.
think about the environment a lot.
think-
yeah.
I think the two chiefs just are wishing they can drive on the road before they retire. I think that's it'll be a long time coming. I said, but the yeah, it's just to get back to the other point. I can't speak for Wailu. Like, we're not here for the mine. We're not like we do talk to them. They actually engage us on our process, but they. You know, when they open up, you're going to ask, because we ask them all the time too. Like, when's the plan? You got a plan? Are you coming out and engage, you know, in that plan for mine development? So, I mean, the answer is that it's contingent on the road. So I was like, okay, so you're going to wait till that's completed. So think of the timeline. Say the worst case scenario happens, like it's 7 years construction, right? Then you got to start the mine EA, right? Like, I don't know how old you're going to be, Lawrence. I know how old I'm going to be. Be hitting the CPP age there, but you think another 5 years, right? At least, you know, for a rigorous environmental impact assessment. If it's, you know, if they're doing so. People asked us that question as well, and I said you got to just talk to Wailu about their plans, because I don't know what it is. I really don't. So Noron, like the formal, they did submit a project description. They embarked on both the federal and provincial. They volunteered for individual EA, but that included an east-west road to Pickle Lake. So. And they had an approved terms of reference with terms and conditions on it. I think that's posted. You can probably find that on the MECP website. But they don't need a road now. So I don't know. So they're in this sort of regulatory quandary. Like, do they resubmit a project description? You know, you got new owners now with different mining engineering eyes on it. Maybe they have a different plan than what Noront had, right? So Noront went through three or four management. So the explorers that discovered the site, they're not mine developers. They find deposits, right? And I think the second management, the institutional investors that bought Noront after that discovery, they put in mine developers. And it was Wes Hansen and Paul. No, it was Noront, but they put people that build mines, not find deposits, but build mines. So the investors come in when you find a discovery, and they put in guys that know how to build mines around the world, right? Those guys had a hard time raising the financing because it was a publicly traded company at the time, because the commodity cycle was going on the down, and yeah. So second management got frustrated. Paul passed away. Wes moved on, and then the last management came in and had a tough time too. So each group comes in with their vision, how they want to build this mine. So I'm not sure how Wailu's wants to do it, but you're correct. They did have approved terms of reference with terms and conditions on it, but it was a road, and the road was the part that triggered that, right? Yeah. Lawrence?
The other thing I wanted to ask is, are there ongoing studies now, as we speak, on the environment, on the waters, the peatlands, and so forth? Because we're from Mushkegowuk, and there's some water samplings that we're now taking on the Atawabasket River. For instance, today, a fish was brought in from the Atawabasket River because it was contaminated, so we're doing a lab test on it as we speak. So we'll expand on this research and monitoring. So in the next 5-10 years, or whenever everything is finished up there and you're ready to roll, we'll have more information. Will there be opportunity to submit our findings as not only the regional assessment continues, and comes to a final report. But even beyond that, because these studies need to continue to happen,
Yes.
will there be opportunity to submit our findings?
It depends. I would say yes for sure Northern Road Link, because that's just basically started. WSR, like I said, our first draft is going to come out in October or November. And then if you got stuff to feed into that, Lawrence, like again, that's the comment, like your technical folks will plow through that. If it's the water related chapters, feed into that. If it's the wildlife, or it's the vegetation or habitat, like it's going to be pretty thick document. And my understanding is that the Ontario government also is providing additional funding for the communities to go through it. So those that have the technical advisors right now, and they do have them, not all of them, but there is, I don't know how many, several, I know for sure several, because they fed into the process for WSR, including the IK studies, that they'll probably do their own assessment, or their own review, based on whatever value components that they're gonna, if it's water, or if it's the caribou, peatlands, stuff. So I think we're doing a peatland functional assessment, if I can recall. All the constituent elements of peatlands we're studying, but we're also doing a peatland functional assessment as well for WSR. Then all the other people studies, then socioeconomics, IK, country foods, human health impacts, gender-based analysis, like it's all being done as well. I call them people studies.
So all of that information is available on the website, or?
Well, yeah, so the study plans, if you go to Webequie Supply Road, the study fact sheets are there, the summary of the plans, all the value components that we studied. We posted it. I think some of them even translated. We went through video tutorials. I don't know how many hours of their 10-minute, 15-minute tutorials throughout COVID, just explaining the value components, what they mean in practice. And then when the report comes out, it's like the report. It's the draft report. So the way it works is that the draft reports go out to public. We're putting another 60 days for Indigenous communities. They're going to get the draft report first, and then we're going to release it to the public. So it's the public stakeholders, the government review team, which includes both the Ontario ministries as well as the federal departments. There's a list. You'll find that in the terms of reference in the as well as the TSG stuff. And then all those folks, federal experts and the provincial, will respond to our reports as well. So it's not just the general public and all the stakeholders that are out there, but also the Indigenous. So that's why it's hard to guess the number, like the volume of comments we have. Each one of them has to be addressed. So so we say 3 to 6 months before we addressed every comment, and then have a final report for the ministries. It's the end of the process, and then they get about a year, almost a year, Ange, to review and approve, or not approve. Yeah. So Webequie, like they have their community vote on it, because 17 kilometers is on reserve of WSR. So like they wouldn't be going forward if the support wasn't there. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, as you know, the Chiefs will be out, right? If they were going against the grain. And I think, yeah, so it's just a lot of engagement in the next year on the things. So one of the things we're offering is sit-downs too. So sit-downs having mitigation discussions. The way it typically works sometimes, in these big projects, I did it for Energy East, for TransCanada. You sit down after the report's out, you go through the issues that you had specifically, along, in this case, the pipeline. What are the specific issues that you want to discuss? Here's our proposed mitigation discussions or mitigation measures. and either you agree or disagree, or you offer something different. So if you had 40 issues, we sit down, go through 35 of them, we disagree on 5, or say you disagree on 5 out of the 40, then that's recorded, submitted as part of the final report, and it's up to the Crown to decide what to do with those outstanding things. If it's in scope, because a lot of times the issues is out of scope for the proponent, but if it's in scope, then they'll put some kind of terms and conditions if they approve the project. So big projects like pipelines out west, I think the last one, they had over 400 terms and conditions in the approvals. They approved it, but with 400 terms and conditions. So the proponent, those cost money. So they had to review all that and to see if it's still viable. If we meet all these terms and conditions, is the project still economically viable? Right? So it's a process.
Is Webequie not located in the drainage lake of the Winnis River?
Yes. Yeah.
Iwuannak is not one of the 23 communities being consulted.
Yes, it is.
It is?
Yeah.
Oh,
We were just there a couple weeks ago.
really?
Oh no, so we met the new chiefs a couple weeks ago, but we were supposed to go. Yes. Yeah, they rescheduled till November. So they've been participating on the WSR. They submitted reports with their consultant, and they have a road coordinator as well to help with the community information sessions.
Really useful. I did, yeah, so really informative for me to understand that Webequie is actually the proponent,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's very helpful. Yeah, and just very useful for to think about, and to maybe provide useful comments down the road, hopefully.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I guess good luck with everything.
I always push for specificity. Be very specific on the concerns. If you just go general, we're worried about water, and we'll give you a general response on water. The more specificity, the more specific we have to address.
How comfortable are you with the 50 kilometers of road on peat lines? As far as the durability and the life expectancy and from year to year?
So that's been a fascinating part of this whole project because they're looking at geotextile or geogrid roads. It's a sort of floating road concept. And I always look at it as it's like a snowshoe. You know what I mean? Like the weight distribution. So you put the weight. So it's been done in Quebec. It's been done in Montreal.
As far as the extended distance, though, because distance is a big factor on this.
Yes. I think on the
It's about a 50 kilometer.
so part of the what I was talking about earlier, the 30% preliminary engineering design, we want to move it to 90%. So we got to do a bit more work to get more comfortable with the final design. So that's what's driving this actually.
But if I understand you right, heavy equipment will not necessarily travel much except for the development of lines of the Eagle Nest, I guess. They'll get from the airport down to the, so they'll get lots of heavy traffic on it.
You got to, yeah. So it's like winter roads, right? The realignment of winter roads. Because I used to work on the 2800 on winter roads with communities, and they're doing realignment exercises, basically higher, drier grounds, right? Which is an intern step to an all-season road, right? So now they're looking at all-season roads. Some of them actually are advancing those discussions. I think by Sandy Lake. So Pekanjikam, I was there 20-something years ago when I worked on the Anishinaabe Development Fund. I started that because they wanted a road to Sandy Lake from Pekanjikam, but Deer Lake and North Spirit Lake, they disagreed where the road can go. They wanted the road to go this way, close to their community. They wanted to go this way. Pekanjikam wanted the road to their forestry management unit where all the merchantable timber was. And so we couldn't come to a consensus after 3-4 meetings. We couldn't come to a consensus where the possible conceptual options could be. But we all came to agree we got to cross this Barons River. So we said, okay, let's do a study on across the Barons River because we got to cross it. And so we had to start that. So the winter road, the realignment and all-season roads discussion is happening in pockets within Treaty 9 area. I think those west side of us on the 22 communities, they've said it to me, some of the chiefs and councils, we're watching this because we want roads. And you guys are moving something forward for the community and possibly for the mine that we know that there's only 3 types of roads. There's winter roads in Ontario, there's forestry roads and mining roads like Musselwhite has, and there's the highways. So maybe there's a 4th type of road for the remote north. And what that means is that it's about design, right? So how do you meet the MTO specs around semi-industrial trucks, hitting on that road, to get to your question. So same with us, we're looking at the engineering design, what type of vehicles are there gonna be semi-industrial, and you gotta build them or design them in a way that's gonna manage that. So it's not gonna be versus the north-south, it's gonna be a convoy. So you gotta design it as such, right? So it's the same thing with the Mushkegowuk, De Beers Winter Road. They had to design that winter road. It's probably the highest standard of all the winter roads in the whole Nan area, because it had to deal with trucks, convoy trucks, and with that becomes regulation. How you going to regulate that type of loads, and so it implicates a lot of things. These are layer discussions, and each layer, it's like a calculus. It impacts 4 or 5 other things. When you move one factor, it affects 5, right? It's a calculus of projects, I call it.
I'm kind of curious about this Merritt's road. That's along East Winnipeg, right?
Yes.
And it's trucks transiting that road as well, like the heavy-duty trucks coming. You know what I'm saying?
It's a supply road. I would call it a community supply road.
So it's up at the same standard that you would want for the Webequie
Well, it'd
supply
be
road.
Manitoba transportation standard. Yeah. You have to hit specs, eh?
So a floating road isn't going to be that's not a.
Well, I mean,
a
that's just
limitation
a
of any
parochial
kind.
thing I say, but MTO is engaged with us because you have to do, I forget what's that thing called? It's like a workshop with them, where you have to talk about the design at the end of the day with them. So then you get this question, well, what's regulating this? What's the O&M on this? Because we have to figure that out as well. At the end of the day, what's the cost? Is there increased maintenance on this? Yeah. Right? What kind of surface treatment's going to be on there? Because if you could put just typical asphalt, it's because it moves more than usual roads. That maybe it's not asphalt, right? You know what I mean? So these are layered discussions, right? I'm not a road engineer. I didn't, I couldn't even tell you what donkey trails were before. This is 7 years in. You just learn this stuff. I also teach. Yeah, go ahead.
It seems there's a lot of iffies on this whole project, because I hear sometimes Wailu and saying, oh, no, we need to get this project going. If we don't have it going, we're out of here. And then you have the federal government and the Ontario government and courts over the regional assessment versus the impact assessment. And when the court case came out a couple of months back, where the regional assessment was being seen as unnecessary, there was a lot of yay that came from Wailu and other mining companies, and Ontario as well. Do you see those kind of court cases having an impact on what you're doing as far as trying to gather all this information for regional assessments, road assessments, and everything?
Oh yeah, I mean both politically and legally. I think we watch that landscape, Lawrence, because you just don't know. You just don't know what. But we can't stop. We submitted plans. In those plans, there's seasonality issues. We have to get out there. There's mobilization of crews, and so we got to and these are. This ain't cheap, eh? I don't know. Wait till you guys do your own road. You're gonna see it's tens of millions of dollars of studies, and you're trying to maintain a budget, and you're trying to mobilize and hit that window to do the studies or what have you, and you got to secure helicopters and specialized crews and you're hoping that there's no, death in the community or anything that changes that plan. So on a micro level, yes, and then at the macro level, it's like, okay, what if there's a change of government? What if there's a change of mind? And so we've heard that for 17 years about all the companies. Well, we'll pick up our marbles and go somewhere else. They haven't. 17 years later. We just got new players coming in. I do this, so I can do this all evening. I teach in the evening, and I just go, I burn them out. I burn my students out.
Do we have any more questions? Well, we'll be here till 8 anyways, so
Yeah.
if we want to have a good board, so we can have some sidebar discussions, and any technical questions, we have a couple technicians who may be able to help out answer them. So,
Thank you, and thanks for taking time. I know you guys are busy, and we really appreciate it. This ain't the last one. We'll come back again.
Are you, tomorrow afternoon and evening, or just evening?
Just the evening. That's the Northern Road Link. Yeah.
And what about Casson? Where's Casson? When he was,
Urban Road Link tomorrow.
Yeah, he'll be here tomorrow.
yeah, we're swapping them out. This is
No.
what happens.
And if, Lawrence, I know you run the department there, like if you want a one-on-one with our team, with your team, we'd be more than happy to accommodate. Okay? You rich?
Thanks, folks.
So tomorrow, same crew that's doing the Northern Road?
No.